Someone in the medical field, have you ever genuinely not cared if a patient lived or died? Sorry about the anonymity. Yes, I've had patients that I didn't care if they lived or died. It's not any kind of discrimination, but they usually belong to the same group, Jehovah's Witnesses. They are a particular group that, whenever one of them is admitted for any life-threatening reason, a huge group of Jehovah's Witnesses shows up, including the pastor, to pressure you into making sure that you don't prescribe them blood, whole blood or blood parts. I've been offered medical bibliography by them to support their views. I've had an old lady that had a gastric cancer that was bleeding. I told her that she needed blood and she answered that she didn't want to decide anything. She said that it was her daughter who was going to decide if she received blood or not. I called her daughter, explained the situation and that her mother needed to receive blood emergently. I was clear that it was a life or death situation. Can I confer with someone to decide? I was mind blown. The old lady was minutes, hours from dying, bled out. 2 or 3 hours later I was literally surrounded by members of my patient's community, with the pastor taking a leading role. They explained to me their beliefs. They gave me around 20 studies and more literature about transfusion therapy and alternatives. They tried to argue with me that there were alternatives. In such an acute case there aren't. And the daughter ended up giving me the decision that was against transfusions. Okay, if that's your decision, I'm going to start your mother in palliative care and you can go in and say goodbye. Stay as long as you want. What do you mean say goodbye? I mean that your mother will die within minutes or hours without a transfusion. So you still have a chance to say goodbye. Speechless. I wrote some notes on the patient's process and left. Half an hour later I was called to pronounce her death. The daughter was there watching the whole thing. I gave her my condolences and went to write down the death certificate. She came close to me, pale, lenified, as if in shock. She died. She needed the blood. Yes, she did. The hospital got, directed at me, a complaint about letting the patient die. The case never even went to court. I wrote to the administration about what had happened and they referred my response to a judge that immediately dismissed all complaints. There were never charges. In another case, we received in our ICU a patient who had had a hemicolectomy. Half of the large intestine was removed, due to cancer. Initially the surgeons were resistant to operate on him due to the refusal of receiving any kind of transfusion. But he went into bowel occlusion. There is no passage of gas or feces, so they finally decided to operate after the patient had signed a stack of papers in front of witnesses. He bled during surgery, which is normal, but his cardiovascular system wasn't able to cope with the blood loss and he went into shock. No matter how much fluids we give him, he needed blood. Fluids are great to fill space in your circulatory system and to hydrate you, but they lack red cells, which are of paramount importance to carry oxygen. He was increasingly harder to ventilate, so, again, talk to the family. Verdict against transfusion. Okay, so you may stay as long as you wish to say goodbye because we are going to withdraw all the life support and keep him on comfort, palliative care. What do you mean say goodbye? What do you mean withdraw life support? When someone is in a state from which he won't recover and will inevitably die, keeping him on life support is called dystonasia, and that's a crime. It's prolonging someone's suffering. How can you say that he won't recover? How can you be so cruel? He won't recover because his organs aren't receiving enough oxygen, so they are failing. They aren't receiving enough oxygen because you don't want, and state that he wouldn't want, blood transfusions. Cruelty would be to let him slowly wither and die. What we will do is assure that he doesn't suffer in his last moments. Here we go again with a complaint about not having used alternatives. There goes the same response that in this case nothing would substitute blood. I've read the passages where the Jehovah's Witnesses base their opinion against transfusions. I think that it's taking out of context and to an extreme something that was written, supposedly, more than 2,000 years ago. Not only is it taking it to an extreme, it's convincing people to die unnecessarily. It always takes a toll on health professionals dealing with this kind of cases. Of course the old lady would die from stomach cancer, but she still had a good quality of life. This guy that was operated could have survived, but no blood or derivates. Why do people who are against transfusions come to a hospital when they are bleeding when they know that part of the treatment will be blood transfusions? What goes through someone's mind when they try to convince me to give erythropoietin to a patient with an active bleeding? Why trying to blame a professional with the result of a decision that was theirs, against the professional's opinion? I respect everyone's religious beliefs, but I don't respect disrespect for life, stupidity, nor being a sheep, or a bad shepherd, and by this I mean a shepherd that leads his flock to bad decisions. This may seem that I have something against Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't. But please, don't ask me to treat you the same way when you refuse getting the same treatment.